This week, I want to talk about 8 differentiators of the 95 method. Um, and it's not a super eloquent title, but I haven't done anything like this in a while. I'm going to say it was pre-COVID, so it's been a long time. Um, and I have new listeners primarily on my podcast as opposed to my YouTube channel. I haven't really learned very well how to make the YouTube component do anything, but we do have over 12,000 listeners to the podcast. So the first I want to talk about the 95 method itself and why I came up with the name. I violated every rule. You're not supposed to put a number in your domain name and those types of things. But the 95 method, the name itself comes from basically what I say is that 95% of the performance of an organization has to do with the system that you work in, and only 5% is attributable to the individual primarily or special causes or events. And a lot of this is based in the Deming philosophy. So, I use that kind of as the building block so people can understand then the difference between what I do and probably 99% of other people that are out there. So these 8 things that I go through really are what I consider to be the differentiators, and as opposed to what other business advising firms or consulting firms or whatever category they may fall into. So the first thing that differentiates is that I focus on the system, and I'm not saying other people don't, but obviously because of the name, I'm focused in on the system. I'm not trying to make each individual better, but they do get better by becoming broader thinkers. And so there's the individual versus the system component, and that my primary focus is on the system. And then the second thing is analytical versus synthetic thinking. And this runs along the same line, but if any of the videos that I have at the very beginning, there's a link to a playlist on my YouTube channel that you can get to. That may be a good reason for some of the people listening on the podcast, but not the YouTube channel, to go there. And I have videos out there about analytical thinking versus synthetic thinking. But just briefly, analytical thinking, we naturally know how to tear things apart. But synthetic thinking, to be able to see the whole, is something that really you have to learn. It doesn't come natural, but it's, I would say, in my mind at least, for an executive and for people that are in a system, to be able to understand how the whole of an organization works. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, this is not a philosophy, it's a method. And, I follow the Deming philosophy because it's something I've studied for, has it been 30 years? Yeah. It's been over 30 years since I first went to a Deming seminar at the invitation of General Motors. And so the philosophy of Dr. Deming doesn't really, it says a lot of cool things. People like to hear some of the counterintuitive types of things that Dr. Deming talks about. He in his time, he really tore apart the way that management thought and developed a philosophy around it. But what he didn't provide was a method. And so, the whole makeup of the 95 method is that it gives you a way of doing it. Not saying it's the best way. And my philosophy is, there's always a better way. I found this that I've added and tweaked over, at least 20 years of working with the Deming philosophy. Well, over 30 years actually, of working with the Deming philosophy, that the method is something that people can learn and do, as opposed to try and take a philosophy and then try and implement it to an organization. I've always found that to be very difficult, and I tried many years at the very beginning. So had to, through some trial and error, we're seeing what other organizations are doing, working with different consulting firms, develop this particular method. And, it has things in it that Deming talked about, for instance, innovation. He talked about the importance of innovation, but didn't have a method for it. He talked about the importance of data, but didn't really provide a method for how you would get the correct types of data that you need to run your organization. Same thing with aim and of an organization, the purpose of our organization. All of these things I have methods for to be able to, for an organization, kind of follow along and build within their organization something very unique, because even in the same industry, as people have gone through it, always a different result, even if their closest competitor follows the method, because they have different customers. The systems are different management, different executives, different workers, whole slew of things, technology. So it's something just very, very unique in that you don't get the same result going through different organizations. The fourth thing is, when I first started the podcast, I really wanted to learn a little bit about neuroscience, do a little bit about psychology, and how do you get people to change their thinking? Because one of the things about the Deming philosophy and the 95 method is you have to think differently. And just telling people to think differently doesn't work. You need to change your thinking. How many times you heard that? That isn't the way we think around here, all those types of things. So I interviewed a number of neuroscientists and other people in that particular field that had done things with neuroscience. And it's actually in my podcast, it's season 1. And I don't think I have any videos. I didn't do any video interviews or anything. It was before I started doing anything on YouTube. But so the neuroscience, psychology, I cannot change your thinking. Nobody can change somebody else's thinking. They have to change it themselves. And what you do is you try to build experiences for people that when they see something, you give them some questions to ask when they're observing their own organization, and then they can see something, or maybe have to put them in a different experience, and then they start to change their mind, because they always thought, oh, well, this is the way it is. But if they see it differently, with their own eyes and ears, then you begin to change your thinking. But this isn't a hammer type of method. Tried that too, by the way. The fifth thing is movement away from old management thinking. Now, what do I mean by that? Most management is still built in a lot of the things that Henry Ford, and Frederick Taylor had done back at the beginning of the 1900s. And, these are things that kind of are built into the way we've designed organizations, what I call the functional separation of work. And, they are, it's new management thinking very different than the thinking that is promoted still, even in business schools today and MBA programs, that kind of industrial functional separation of work. And you can tell by the design of the organizations themselves that that's, if you want to, okay, where do we see this? Well, every organization, sales separated from operation, separated from information technology, separated from finance, because that's the way they're all built, right? But there's other ways to look at an organization. With all the advances that we've had in technology, management hasn't really changed that much. There's 1,000, 10,000, 1 million books on leadership. But, I would tell you that you got to have a method too. And that's really what I'm focused in on. My things will make you a better leader, but it's the method that will be the differentiator. And you got to kind of have both. There are people, hear the natural born leader. Well, I don't know. If people can be natural born leaders and still drive an organization into the ground if they don't have a method, right, in order to improve their organization. The sixth thing is that a differentiator is universities don't teach this. There is no university out there that teaches what I'm teaching. They are typically giving you case studies of, Apple and, probably NVIDIA now, of how these organizations became great. But that has nothing to do with your organization. People try to make Apple into, an HVAC company or a telecom or, a bank or something like that. There are some things that cross over, and in my MBA, we did these types of things. But the best way to learn something is studying your own organization, being given a series of things to do in order to understand how your organization works as a system. The seventh thing is experience is important as it is gained through knowledge. So this goes back to having what's referenced as a normative experience, where you're going back and actually seeing and doing things to help change your mind. But more importantly, you're making decisions and doing things based on actual knowledge rather than a spreadsheet of data with information on it, filtered conversations with, people on the front line, or people in your organization, trusted people in your organization. You're basically gaining your experience through actually seeing and hearing things in your organization. Much different than somebody dictating to you what you should learn. The eighth thing is, I'm building ways for my executive education program. It's kind of a self-guided tour. I offer up 2 different phone calls. It's $1,500 to go basically through that. Kind of give. My belief is that if an executive becomes a systems thinker, then they will have skills that most of their other executives in the firm don't have. But it's also, the executive education program is built for teams of, within an organization, for them to, in essence, go through kind of a step-by-step guide, just like I talked about. Now, as I'm building this business transformation component into my education, I probably will not make it one big bundle. I will probably do it in partitions so that, make it a little bit more affordable, for organizations and for people, just to kind of understand, what's the first step to doing this? And then if I'm interested, you can go to the second step and so forth. So my plan for the business transformation piece is the same. And there's great, if a Venn diagram, they overlap each other a lot. And matter of fact, the encouragement is that, and in the executive education program, is that you would utilize what you've learned in order, and then you can start to do a business transformation from that. So you'll have, in essence, the skills and the thinking that's required to do a business transformation that's very holistic, as opposed to very functionally oriented towards, a piece. But how do you transform the entire organization? So, all of these will have different types of support associated with it. You can do it all on your own, and many people have. Then maybe they come back later and say, can you help me with this piece? Or sometimes people just have me come and kind of kick it off, get them going, and provide some phone support to someone in the organizations that's leading either the executive education program or the transformation itself. But most of these things start with a 30-minute phone call, and I have a link in the description, at least on my YouTube channel, that you can just click on and set up a 30-minute call. Is kind of the way most people initiate, although I get emails too, as far as how do I get this started, or am I really somebody who or my organization's something that would benefit from this, and usually in 30 to 45 minutes you can at least say, okay, here are the types of things you would need to be doing. I'll send you off and do some things, and we'll set up another call, a week or two from now. And that way that you kind of, just take the first step, I guess, is the whole reason for, having an initial 30-minute call, and understanding of what it is that you're trying to achieve, and whether my method is something that could actually help your organization. And if there's interest there, then, like I said, I give you, the person I'm talking to from that organization, some things to do. And then they report back, or they don't, and that's just the way that things move forward. So anyway, when I hadn't covered this, like I said, since probably, I think it was like the month before the pandemic, I'd covered kind of what makes the 95 method different, but that was over 3 years ago. It's been over 3.5 years ago, actually. So anyway, that's what I wanted to cover this week. And remember, there is always a better way.